How does the economy work? Work, value of work, taxes. Indeed, a lot depends on the various regulations created by politicians, the functioning of the judiciary as another public authority, and the actions of company leaders. Educational staff, such as teachers, along with activists, journalists, marketing specialists, and opinion leaders, all play significant roles in shaping the reality that surrounds us. And, of course, we as consumers also have an impact on this reality. All these individuals and structures have varying degrees of influence on our lives, and the decisions they make can directly affect us in a vivid manner, very often. Indeed, it is essential to emphasize that the market comprises people, including our friends and families. We are all consumers, entrepreneurs, inventors, scientists, artists, and employees. Consequently, the way we function and the economic system in which we participate directly influence the actual functioning of ourselves and society as a whole. It's important to clarify that the concept of market self-regulation is often misunderstood. While the market may exhibit some degree of self-regulation in certain aspects, it is crucial to recognize that there is no complete self-regulation of the market as a whole. External factors and various interventions significantly influence its functioning.
Hiring and work. The issue of employment or job search is undeniably complex. It is not accurate to assume that a competitive market solves all problems or that the best products always come out on top. In socio-economic systems, things are not that straightforward. Historical and current realities confirm this. Anyone with work experience knows well that employment is influenced by a multitude of factors, many of which are unknown and not immediately obvious. It goes beyond mere competitiveness. The process of finding a job is shaped by subjective elements, making it a nuanced and intricate journey. Much depends on the individual characteristics and actions of people. For example, a superior, despite having a diploma or certificate confirming theoretical knowledge, may not be able to apply that knowledge in practice, or may simply choose not to. Education levels vary, and different values and ideologies also influence those in senior positions. The realities in which they operate are diverse. The thing is that in everyday real life and work, many factors have a nature that disrupts theoretical assumptions. We can easily imagine various scenarios that can lead to unemployment today. A person is looking for a job, but their financial requirements are too high, and they are unable to secure a job. The person's financial requirements are reasonable, but the employer is stingy or facing financial constraints due to tax issues. An individual has assets or income from other sources and is only pretending to look for a job, but not actively seeking employment. Miscommunication, lack of communication, or incorrect assessment of the potential employee leads to the person and the job offer not aligning properly. Someone's skills or services are not in demand in the job market. Despite having the required skills, some individuals struggle to sell themselves convincingly to potential employers. Burnout or temporary incapacity for work due to factors like mobbing or overload affects an individual's ability to work without a medical certificate. Sudden changes in job requirements, sometimes driven by company policies, may result in people losing their jobs. An incompetent or biased recruitment employee may fail to hire the right candidate or accurately evaluate applicants. Exhausted bosses may make impulsive decisions to shut down the company. Market conditions or external powers, including the judiciary, can lead to the destruction of a company. Random events, such as natural disasters, can also lead to the closure of businesses. Traumatic experiences may hinder an individual's ability to function effectively at work. An individual possesses skills and knowledge but lacks customers or clients for their services. Technological advancements may render certain skills obsolete, leading to job displacement. Profit maximization motives may result in layoffs of valuable employees. Lack of financial resources for retraining prevents someone from pursuing new job opportunities. Macro events, like a pandemic, can disrupt the job market and lead to unemployment. Low disposable income among potential customers may affect the demand for goods and services, leading to layoffs. Non-payment from contractors can result in layoffs, lack of investment, or even closure of a company. Social impacts, both positive, example, awareness campaigns highlighting issues, and negative, example, slander and personal attacks, can influence a person's job prospects. Many more circumstances can be added. What's more, these circumstances can sometimes even act simultaneously. So, an unemployed person or a bankrupt company really does not always have any influence on anything. These are usually complicated and non-obvious situations. Here I will mention that when I write about qualifications, I do not mean various diplomas or higher education. It is worth paying some attention, for example, to university rankings, although I agree that rankings are not the final oracle. After all, even at the so-called less prestigious universities and schools, there are very talented students, pupils, and teachers, and think about this aspect in the context of the quality of acquired knowledge. Another thing is that, in fact, apart from formal education in the form of studying, we all somehow still learn to a greater or lesser extent.
The value of work. On the market, depending on the adopted economic and legal systems, there exists the so-called employment relationship, full-time job, employment contract, contracts, self-employment, which is regulated in various ways. We can distinguish several work models. Full-time employment, employment contract. Employment according to other permitted forms, example, contracts for specific work, mandates, contracts. Self-employment, freelance work, independent work, example, freelancers. Volunteer work, unpaid. Social and political activity, activists, volunteers, paid and unpaid. Unregistered work activities, such as tutoring, also classified into paid and unpaid work. Educational assistance, tutoring, pure assistance. Work performed without the necessary registrations. Remote work. The above-mentioned forms of work are divided into several groups. The basic groups are paid and unpaid work. Paid work is of a typical nature, involving the exchange of knowledge, skills, and time, worth noting, in exchange for either cash or barter. However, I would be inclined to say that work is usually compensated with financial means. On the other hand, free-of-charge work includes volunteering, social activity, childcare, peer-to-peer tutoring, which do not have the same nature as the previously mentioned forms and are not valued in financial meaning remunerated as paid work. Of course, the above-mentioned forms of work also occur as illegal forms when the forms of employment indicated in the law are avoided, for example, for profit, exploitation. At the same time, due to defective legal and economic regulations, employment outside the legal form may be the only form of work and income opportunities. For instance, when there are low values of income in relation to employment costs, lack of other alternatives, or lack of means of subsistence, income security, economic coercion. Examples: too high taxation and the amount of the minimum wage, i.e., employment costs in general, can be factors preventing legal employment, especially when a company's revenues are too low in relation to the amount of remuneration. The lack of means of subsistence forces some individuals to perform work on an informal basis. In cases like a pensioner who wants to have their apartment painted, the cost of the service may be too high in relation to their income. In such situations, employees, and sometimes employers, may feel compelled to violate the law in order to function and carry out work. Consequently, this distortion of legal standards can lead to unfair competition due to reduced operating costs. As a result, incorrect correlations of various factors, such as taxation or labor standards, can lead to unemployment or hinder the ability of companies to operate effectively. Implementing a universal basic income, UBI, could potentially improve the protection of individuals in such circumstances and significantly enhance the correlation between costs and employment opportunities. On the other hand, inspections aimed at preventing violations of labor standards, conducted by bodies like PIP, the National Labor Inspectorate, and the court, require both effective actions and legal tools. While these inspections incur budgetary costs, they are primarily reactive measures taken after the fact. In conclusion, addressing these issues effectively may involve finding a balance between preventive measures and reactive actions, while considering the potential benefits of initiatives like UBI to support individuals facing challenges in the labor market.
Valuation of the value of work. As can be mentioned, the exchange of work for specified remuneration encompasses many aspects of this issue. Additionally, there are differences in the market, state, social, and historical valuation of work. If someone has a contract of employment, according to the contract, the work is done, and the person has the value as stated in the contract, according to the financial flows, as much as someone actually received. Now, depending on the legal construction, it's worth a look into the question of whether benefits are to be taken into account, the values written in the contract, or real funds that have been left received. On the other hand, if we want to go to the store, then, however, it is the real financial resources that we have at our disposal that count. According to state criteria, example, employment in the public sector, the dynamics might be slightly different. Here, decision makers play a major role. On the other hand, the social evaluation of the value of work is even more complex. Let's take a group of citizens, activists, who, through their activities, uncover some far-reaching irregularities, example, in the impact of a company or administration on society, example, ecology. Another group advocates for their rights, while someone else is seeking solutions to a problem and devoting their private time to these endeavors. From the perspective of the financial market or budgetary, individuals engaged in such activities might not receive any immediate monetary compensation, although they should. Thus, from this financial viewpoint, the value of their work might not be highly appreciated. However, the value of their work in the social sense, and even more so in the context of the development of humanity, can be immense. For example, think of inventors who changed the world by developing the light bulb, the wheel, or even work standards. Today, these are obvious and essential aspects of our lives. The issue of labor valuation in market economies of various types, as well as in other models, is evident. In systems with an established work order, implemented in various ways, often in a veiled manner, such as regimes, totalitarian and quasi-totalitarian systems, the value of work is frequently determined directly through administrative and political decisions. Similar challenges also arise in budgetary spheres. Increasing the supply of jobs, i.e., the number of available jobs, can theoretically lead to wage increases. However, in reality, it doesn't always work out that way, as it depends on various factors such as the type of job and its location, the overall economic and social structure, and other contextual elements. In conclusion, the evaluation of labor and its correlation with wages and job availability can be influenced by a multitude of factors, making it a complex and multifaceted issue in various economic systems and societal setups. It is no secret that within the same small community, such as a small or large city, people who perform exactly the same activities and work may earn completely different amounts. This phenomenon is entirely normal, especially in market systems. These differences in earnings are further influenced by various factors, including real purchasing power. Real purchasing power refers to what individuals can buy with their earnings and how much they can afford, considering variations in prices and methods of taxation. Many factors contribute to this state of affairs, including management skills, negotiation skills and abilities of the employee and the employer, Internal systems within companies. Emotional attitude towards the employee. Politics and existing social structures within companies. Company policy, including negative events such as significant changes in employment. State policy. The influence of the political apparatus. Political and strategic decisions at the level of powerful companies and organizations, such as financial institutions. Understanding the role and value of an idea or a person's work and its impact on the final effect of the organization. Financial capabilities of the company or organization, including investments and salary payments. Philosophy and ideas of decision makers. Local economic environment. Lobbying. Each of these factors can play a role in determining the discrepancies in earnings among individuals with similar roles and responsibilities within a community. Of course, the above points do not exhaust all issues. This means that the actual value of the work done quite often, and even very often, if not always, deviates from the actual financial valuation of the person's work. This discrepancy is further influenced by internal organizational structures, such as education or completion of various courses, which may not always be directly related to actual skills. In some cases, the aim could be to influence the recruitment outcomes. Education certainly holds value, but possessing certain educational qualifications does not automatically make a person creative, talented, or full of innovative ideas. Conversely, deficiencies in formal education can be supplemented, and there are opportunities for self-education. The quality of education also plays a crucial role. Moreover, the valuation of work and its corresponding remuneration is affected by the ease and cost of replacing an employee, either by hiring a new one or by implementing automated systems and machines. In essence, multiple complex factors contribute to the disparity between the true worth of a person's work and the financial compensation they receive. These factors include educational background, skills, creativity, ease of replacement, and the broader economic and organizational context. In short, a person with high potential can sometimes be completely underestimated and unnoticed. Also, their ideas may be appropriated free of charge, or the payment for ideas may be grossly low, and the idea may be incomprehensible to decision makers. The beneficiaries of the value of the work done are not always those who have actually done any work or invented something. Quite an interesting situation can also involve inspirational value, such as a book that inspires someone, music, poetry, graphics, a conversation with someone, or a reportage. The difference in the financial value of the purchase and the actual, subsequent, virtually incalculable value to an individual can be huge. Examples. We can imagine a situation at school where one friend helps another to pass an exam, by providing educational assistance, and as a result, the second friend succeeds thanks to this support during a critical moment. However, the rewards or benefits of this success may not necessarily go to the person who offered help. Another example is healthcare system employees, such as doctors, nurses, and paramedics, who play a crucial role in saving human lives and improving overall health. Similarly, artists have a significant impact on society through their creative contributions. Cleaning staff, responsible for maintaining cleanliness and hygiene for sanitary reasons, also play a role in promoting general health and aesthetics. However, the financial remuneration and the actual value of work can diverge significantly when viewed in the context of ethical values. Some professions may be undervalued financially, despite their immense societal importance. Moreover, the effort invested in work can often surpass the market valuation of the work in purely financial terms. Many individuals put in substantial time, skill, and dedication to their professions, even when the monetary compensation may not reflect the true worth of their contributions. In conclusion, these examples highlight the complexities and discrepancies in evaluating the true value of work, considering both its ethical significance and the effort exerted. The recognition and appreciation of individuals' contributions should go beyond mere financial compensation, acknowledging their essential roles in society. Here, I will add that very often in the valuation of work, when people try to evaluate their own work or are looking for a job and wonder how much their salary should be, there are many quite interesting phenomena. First of all, the costs of living and the basic needs, resulting from the social structure and our own set or catalogue of needs, are taken into account. However, many people are also willing to lower their expectations temporarily, in the hope that a raise or other favorable developments will occur later. There is also the issue of the ability to calculate the prospective value of work, the comparison of salaries, and, of course, the awareness of the value of work and what the provision of work really is. Factors that affect the undervaluation of work include low supply of available financial resources. When there is a scarcity of financial resources among citizens or the presence of numerous low-income groups, it can lead to lower wages and undervaluation of work. This situation can be exacerbated by inadequate regulations set by authorities. Economic situation and income needs. Economic pressures and the necessity to secure income may lead individuals to accept lower wages or undervalue their own work. Low awareness of the value of one's work. Some individuals may not fully recognize or appreciate the true worth of their contributions, which can result in accepting lower compensation. Lack of understanding of the nature of work. A misunderstanding of the significance of work, regardless of the type of employment, can lead to undervaluation of labor. Cost of living shared among many earners. The division of living costs among multiple earners, such as sharing rent or expenses, might contribute to accepting lower wages. Taxation and social benefit systems. The design of tax burdens and social benefit systems can impact the overall financial well-being of individuals and influence the perception of work's value. Time constraints. Limited time for consumption and the need to meet immediate financial obligations may lead to accepting lower-paying jobs. Government intervention in work valuation. Inappropriate interference by public authorities, for example, setting the amount of benefits, can influence work valuation. Amount of benefits for citizens. The level of benefits provided to citizens can influence their financial situation and may affect their willingness to accept certain wages. Addressing these factors requires comprehensive strategies, including fair regulations, policies promoting economic growth, and efforts to raise awareness of the value of work. Creating a conducive environment where individuals are justly compensated for their contributions is crucial in reducing the undervaluation of work. Here I will add that underestimating the value of work, especially in the financial sense, is not particularly beneficial for local markets, because it does not foster the growth of local purchasing power beyond basic products. Unfortunately, such practices are sometimes employed by politicians, often not in sensible directions. For instance, they may manipulate the employment system or favor specific companies or professional groups over others. Such actions can also discourage people from engaging in certain work or even lead them to change jobs, an attempt to control the market, such as offering low salaries for a particular group, like teachers. Factors that contribute to increasing the value of work include demand for labor. Sometimes, a surplus of jobs can increase the value of work, as employers may need to offer higher salaries to attract and retain skilled workers. Stable income situation of companies. When companies are financially stable and profitable, they are more likely to offer competitive wages to their employees. Growing consumer base. An adequate and increasing number of consumers with sufficient disposable income can drive demand for products and services, leading to higher wages for workers in relevant industries. Economic prosperity. A thriving economy with no significant constraints can create a conducive environment for businesses to flourish, resulting in higher wages for employees. Cost of living. The cost of living plays a significant role in determining the value of work. In areas with a higher cost of living, employers may offer higher wages to match the living expenses of their workers. Transparency and knowledge. Understanding the value of one's work and being aware of industry salary standards can empower workers to negotiate fair wages. Individual expenses. When living expenses are not shared among multiple earners, individuals may have a better chance of negotiating higher wages that cover their personal needs. Leisure time. Having an adequate amount of time to consume goods and services can influence the value of work, as employees may prioritize work-life balance and seek higher wages to support their lifestyle. Legal regulations. Good and correct legal regulations, such as fair labor laws and minimum wage standards, can protect workers and ensure they receive appropriate compensation for their work. By addressing these factors, employers and policymakers can create an environment that values and rewards the contributions of workers, fostering a fair and prosperous economy.
No payment for work or products. The extreme situation of not receiving payment for work or services performed can have severe repercussions and disrupt the functioning of the entire market, particularly regarding the market value of work. This situation applies regardless of the type of employment relationship, and it can occur between entrepreneurs or self-employed individuals and companies. This kind of traumatic situation has disastrous consequences, especially for those with lower incomes who lack financial reserves. People with higher incomes or more resources may have a financial cushion to weather such situations. However, for those suddenly losing their income, it can lead to a blockage in their personal development and normal functioning, as well as hinder their ability to invest and consume. This lack of consumption affects the market as well. Moreover, such individuals may not be able to engage in other work simultaneously to secure their existence, and ultimately, they bear the consequences of someone else's actions. Such mechanisms can lead to company collapses and subsequent layoffs of employees. In extreme cases, a chain of financial arrears can trigger massive economic collapses, potentially leading to significant crises, even revolution-like situations. To address these challenges and provide security for those with lower incomes, the concept of unconditional basic income gains relevance. Such income could act as an alternative safety net, especially during times of economic uncertainty or unexpected disruptions like the pandemic. The pandemic and the actions taken by governments, including extra-legal measures, have brought about psychological changes in consumers and shifts in consumption habits. Necessary expenses such as masks and disinfectants have also impacted spending patterns. In conclusion, extreme situations of non-payment for work can have far-reaching consequences, affecting individuals, companies, and the entire economic system. Implementing measures like an unconditional basic income could offer a potential solution to provide security and support for people during such challenging times.
Shifting the costs of performing activities, work. Another issue is the externalization of costs. What does this mean? Well, it is evident in situations like automated cash registers in stores, where customers voluntarily perform the work of a salesperson without any remuneration. Similarly, barcode readers eliminate the need to interact with salespeople, and self-service stores and parcel lockers further externalize the work to customers. Additionally, various satisfaction surveys and product reviews are often provided by customers without any compensation. These examples can be multiplied. Consider products with the company's brand prominently displayed. Customers work as sliding advertising pillars, completely free. In fact, they still pay the company for it when they buy products. Celebrities, athletes, and actors often get paid big money for showing product and company advertisements. Another instance is self-assembly and painting of furniture, where the customer does the work and pays for it. Furthermore, the concept of refueling one's car oneself was once unthinkable in many countries and communities. As a result, numerous areas in the operations of companies have changed in a way that shifts the actual work from companies and their employees to the customers. Despite this, the profits are reaped by these companies, enabling them to gain significant financial gains, reaching millions and billions. Consequently, the cash flow model is experiencing drastic changes, affecting the way economic potential is built. However, this shift also leads to a real shrinkage in the labor market, particularly in relatively well-paid positions. Consequently, the issue of income from work has been significantly distorted over the years. This distortion also underscores the inadequacies of the current tax and social systems, which, to some extent, stem from long-standing practices. It is worth noting that if work were rewarded directly, manual laborers might be millionaires, which is not the reality for the majority. The space of the Internet and access to free content present an even more intriguing dynamic. In such cases, the individuals who transfer knowledge or perform work do not always receive remuneration, particularly from those who benefit from this knowledge or work. Simultaneously, other individuals may freely use the knowledge or entertainment without compensating the creators, while intermediaries, such as Internet platforms, profit from the content without directly supporting the creators. Additionally, personal data collection for marketing purposes and the acquisition of various goods through different portals, including social networks, play a significant role in this scenario. Various advertising and sales models on these platforms further contribute to a disrupted classic flow of work, knowledge, and time for remuneration. It is important to note that the existence of such portals is not inherently inappropriate, as the idea itself can be valuable. Indeed, there is a significant amount of work in the market and the world that is undervalued or not given any financial compensation at all, despite its effects being utilized to increase the value of other people's work. This discrepancy means that such work is often not fully reflected in economic indicators like GDP or the Gini index. Additionally, faulty valuations can affect benefits, pensions, and other social systems, leading to a misalignment between the real value of work and the remuneration received. To address these issues and protect individuals from the shortcomings of social and economic systems, there is a need for a system of equalization and support. Universal Basic Income, UBI, serves as one such solution, providing a stable financial foundation and security for individuals regardless of their employment status. It is essential to recognize that the revenues of companies investing in automation or other technologies are often built upon the previous work of their employees. Sometimes, these technological advancements can lead to job losses for these very employees. This highlights the complexities of valuing work and the need to ensure that the benefits of technological progress are shared more equitably across society.
Work, artificial work, rule of law and hierarchy. Theoretical states have implemented and continue to implement various measures to counteract unemployment by creating artificial work, to a greater or lesser extent. One method includes increasing the amount of work through regulations, often unnecessary, with the primary aim of boosting employment in the administration sector. However, this approach can lead to further problems. Firstly, such systems often result in the implementation of confusing legal constructions that are, in reality, detrimental to the functioning of companies and non-administrative sectors. This is because operating costs are artificially increased, and efficiency is reduced due to unnecessary bureaucratic burdens. Secondly, cliques can form within the administration due to the perceived certainty of income and job stability compared to the instability of the job market. Consequently, pathological methods of employment and promotions can emerge, leading to issues like favoritism or nepotism. Moreover, the desire for a stable income can force individuals to blindly follow the orders of superiors, even if those orders are illegal, due to economic subordination. Acting under conditions of economic coercion does not lead to an increase in the final quality and effectiveness of actions, and it also undermines the rule of law. Instead, such actions can increase the cost of the state's operations in unproductive or less effective areas, without truly improving the quality of life for citizens, and sometimes even having the opposite effect. While a certain number of officials and individuals employed in public service areas are necessary, it is crucial to ensure that they are placed where their work serves a meaningful purpose and benefits the citizens. Avoiding pointless, redundant, and ineffective positions is essential to make sure that any work carried out using public funds has a tangible impact and contributes to the welfare of the public. In summary, work done with public funds should always have a purpose and be directed towards the benefit of the citizens, avoiding wasteful and ineffective practices. The tax system, the distribution of purchasing power and the value of work. The key issue is to comprehend the impact of tax and social regulations, as well as work performance standards and permits issued by public authorities, on the actual functioning of the market. Some of these regulations are logical and sensible, while others are not. Taxation and the minimum wage play a crucial role in determining the general labor costs. The minimum wage sets the threshold for how much someone should be paid for their work, and it can vary based on monthly rates or hourly rates. Such regulations are designed to ensure that individuals earn an income that allows them to cover their basic needs and function at a certain level of existence. Without these regulations, there would be a risk of undercompensating workers to an extent that makes it impossible for them to sustain themselves economically, not only in terms of simple consumption but also meeting their other essential needs. Example: a teenager living with their parents, who earns extra money as a student or young individual, may be willing to accept lower wages, especially if they are partially supported by their parents. Their minimum financial needs are generally lower compared to parents with multiple children. The situation can further vary if someone has loans to repay or if there are differences in property ownership, such as the number of apartments, which can also generate rental income. It is essential to consider the distinction between loans taken for luxury expenses, like buying a car, and loans used to cover basic necessities. Another significant aspect is the sum of taxation imposed on a company, which affects its operating costs and, in turn, influences the marginal cost of producing goods or services. Additionally, the minimum wage, along with income taxation, determines the purchasing power available to individuals, which reflects the amount they can spend. Certain goods, like food, are essential for daily functioning, while others are necessary for various aspects of life. Economists often use baskets of goods to calculate different minimum sizes and inflation rates. These baskets differ in their contents and the formulas used to determine rates. However, if the disposable income, i.e., the finances at our disposal, is low, there may be a situation where goods cannot be purchased. In such a situation, the demand for basic household goods is satisfied first. Of course, the type of goods is variable and depends on a multitude of factors, including, of course, social ones, but in the end, it is important. Hence, the real shape of taxes and social systems and their real operation have a significant impact on the operation of the market and the ability of companies to operate. Even if a company offers a good service or good quality goods, consumers may simply not have the money to buy. In short, theoretically, the best solution from the financial point of view of an entrepreneur is a low cost of employment, i.e., the lowest possible rates, which theoretically results in higher profits, but such a model reduces the purchasing power of buyers, which has the opposite effect on the market, i.e., inhibits purchasing power, and the lowest taxes on employment and salary payments. In this case, theoretically, this results in the best ratio of net pay to total employment costs, but it also has a different impact on the market. Therefore, what seems good for entrepreneurs is not always good for them. On the other hand, too high employment costs in the sector of the lowest wages with lower company revenues lead to a similar effect. Just an analysis of taxes should be considered on many levels, taking into account various aspects of their impact. Because the actual shape of the tax system, not only in terms of the interest rate but also the types of taxes, when and what is included as the tax base, depends on public authorities, legislation or through the operation of the judicial system. Example, decision of the Constitutional Tribunal K-21/14 on the tax-free amount. If implemented, public authorities have a large or even a very large impact on the operation of the market. Another issue is, of course, the functioning of social systems, which generally provide money, i.e., create purchasing power among citizens who have lost their current income for various reasons, such as loss of health, loss of income from work, difficult financial situation, retirement. Again, precise regulation of how social systems work, of real action, creates not only a social shield but also the purchasing power necessary for markets to function. In short, if we add the effect of scale to this, we can see that the state plays an important role in the real operation of the economy in this matter as well. Therefore, disturbances or faulty construction of the above mechanisms that create purchasing power can and do cause problems not only with the functioning of many people as individuals but also disrupt the operation of the entire market, especially by leaving disposable income too low, which ultimately indirectly affects the financial value of the work of those people who have to adjust the prices of their services to the amount of disposable income, provided that they are, of course, able to reduce the price. In extreme cases, companies go bankrupt or relocate production. Of course, the correlation between the shape of taxes and disposable income, regardless of the source of income, needs to be analyzed through economies of scale but also through the shape of the community and demographics together.
Financial flows in companies and organizations. Another element that is worth analyzing is the distribution of the entire company's income, as well as remuneration for work and total remuneration costs. It is important to examine the value of the work provided and the distribution of the company's income, including payments such as remuneration, in connection with the real operation of the tax system in relation to the value of work, time, and ideas. It is worth analyzing the entire issue of spending money in the context of employment. Well, basically, because there are exceptions, a higher position in the company and organization is followed by higher direct remuneration and higher values of indirect employment costs resulting from allowances, such as the value of salary supplements, the value of benefits, the value of gadgets, the area of the occupied office, the boss usually has bigger office, cost of renting space, service, value of training. In short, the total value of the salary in the upper wage zone, much higher than it appears based on the direct salary paid. After all, a person who receives a company car uses it, but at the same time, he does not have to incur expenses from his own salary. The cost of using the car is transferred to the company. That is, from the entire income and from the work of all employees. Here I would like to remind you that a part of the value of the income generated by each company employee is transferred to pay the company's operating costs. Such a car is maintained. In short, because every company has operating costs, the value of the sale of goods must be enough to pay the costs, and what is left for the rest in a certain simplification. Thus, the amount of distributed company revenue per employee is most redirected towards people with higher earnings and usually higher positions. Of course, it is worth noting that because such people usually also have a larger range of benefits, i.e. part of the expenses are covered by the company, they also have a higher purchasing power volume in relation to the actual basic salary. In addition, training paid for by the company somehow increases the value of the employee and his potential for the future in the labor market, for which all employees work for. This simplified description points to another problem, showing not entirely obvious aspects of the final valuation of someone's work and its effects. At the same time, in complex company structures, but not only, the sum of the work of lower-income employees often allows the company to operate at all. Therefore, the company's total income, in the context of who causes it, is an extremely complex aspect, sometimes even political. The state administration's decision to direct the order to a given company, the amount of remuneration, the position held by public authorities or cooperation with them. A complete analysis of financial flows in companies also points to many disturbing factors in the valuation of work.
The flow of additional values. When performing work in an organization or company, not only the work itself is transferred, but also the flow of certain skills and know-how, most often in a way that the real final beneficiary is the company. If an employee has an interesting idea or observation, it ultimately increases the potential of the company. After all, when you watch commercials or attend presentations, you usually don't hear the name of the employee who actually invented something, but the name of the company. This is a typical example of the transfer and, in some situations, a kind of appropriation of some good for the benefit of the organization. This is combined with, firstly, defects in the valuation of work, and secondly, with the accumulation of such benefits along with the financial and organizational abilities of companies to accumulate and use them, but unfortunately, they are also sometimes blocked, causing a significant increase in value precisely for the companies and organizations. A classic example may be the use of an employee, his knowledge, and then dismissing the employee. At the same time, the company's total know-how grows, and later on, it is this company that profits again from the use of previously accumulated knowledge. It is worth recalling that knowledge resources are acquired through, in fact, first training of staff with the participation of public money, education. Of course, there are also situations where the company invests in the employee through training. However, this does not apply to everyone, and not every company does this. In addition, sometimes in this case, companies require temporary loyalty, in the event of a violation of this, even with the return of money invested in training. Unfortunately, it sometimes happens that companies can also block good and useful ideas.
Social cost shifting. It is worth taking a moment to consider some models of benefit flow in relation to aspects of entire communities. For example, a private company whose income from operations goes to it and is distributed to employees according to the rules adopted by this company. The problem is that, in fact, the company, and therefore the private owner, exploits the other citizen and often the environment. After all, performing work is a time commitment, but also a healthy one. Thus, in the case of overloading employees or faulty functioning of the work system, faulty regulations, the employee may, in fact, be overexploited, then dismissed, and the costs of such a situation transferred to society. Hence, the regulations regarding not only labor standards but also the need to properly tax the operation of companies, because there is nothing wrong with earning money, but it is the business that has to bear the costs of its operation also in terms of social and environmental consequences, or at least it should. This is just another economic aspect to consider. In our country, but not only, many issues of this type are senselessly violated. Therefore, in order to implement appropriate economic models, often with the help of the Constitution, public authorities are ordered to finance healing and corrective measures, and build regulations that counteract such situations. Appropriate tax regulations should also be developed in this way to finance these expenses.
Types and ways of earning income. The type and method of earning income is an important distinction in the context of understanding, for example, the value of performing work, but also the construction of the tax system. Here, I would like to point out that when it comes to considerations, or creating structures, or modeling tax systems, the most appropriate, in my opinion, is an economic analysis, but also taking into account the requirements imposed by the main legal regulations or the construction of the economy. First of all, there is income from work, i.e. remuneration for work, from capital, example, from interest, dividends, from intellectual property, from ownership, example, rent, and from someone else's work, i.e. from the work of employees. However, the types and ways of earning income are very important to understand the functioning of the markets because they determine, among others, the possible degree of income in the context of economies of scale and the time needed to engage in obtaining a specific income. Income from work is, for example, a person working full-time for 8 or more hours. It is possible to regulate less, has a limited ability to earn more, because his time is already allocated. Income from capital is income without performing a classic full-time job, therefore, such a person has income and time, and thus huge opportunities to dispose of time in relation to a person who works full-time and does not have this time. Revenue from scale effects is again limited depending on the type of product. Simply, as long as an artist or performer at a concert can earn a large sum, example, from a 1.5 hour concert and 10,000 tickets sold, say PLN 150, minus costs. At the same time, not every artist achieves such scale effects, and what's more, not every willing person can, for example, go to concerts every day. It is not necessarily true that the stage performers with the highest quality earn the most, because this is another complex and interesting aspect. The remaining amount of free time, example, full time, is often too small for further development and education, example, normal fatigue, childcare, not to mention the issues of everyday life. In turn, a person who has income from capital or income from economies of scale may achieve higher income in a short time. People who have to devote time to a specific person or client do not have the opportunity to exceed the scale effect, such as a photographer carrying out a specific order for a specific person or a doctor who deals with one specific patient at a given time. So, again, these are more examples than income and, in a way, the valuation of work is extremely complex and not obvious. Not only that, but it is also worth adding another issue: people with an adequate financial background can buy the knowledge and time of other people, thus making the situation easier for themselves and often taking further advantage of their potential. In this way, they also gain free time that they can spend on other additional activities. Let us note that in this case, it is not only about buying specialist knowledge, but also about leveraging their resources to optimize their time and opportunities.
Economic potential, financial, social, organizational. One important thing is to understand that financial potential, social potential, and organizational potential are not the same. Financial potential, i.e., having financial resources, enables investment and provides access to the market, such as advertising and marketing activities. However, while it does not guarantee 100% success, it significantly facilitates or even makes it possible to enter the market quickly, example, through the scale of advertising. On the other hand, the potential of skills and knowledge without the financial resources makes it extremely difficult and almost impossible to enter the market. Social potential, i.e., colloquially having a known brand, a known face, name, contacts, acquaintances, greatly facilitates action, but in itself may also be insufficient. The technical and organizational potential is the potential consisting in the fact that the company, for example, has commercial facilities in the form of 500 stores. This makes it possible to introduce various products to the market, or even block their sale. In the era of online commerce, the potential in the digital reality is also important.
Scale effects in the company. Economies of scale also apply to the day-to-day operations of companies. It primarily impacts the sphere of production, with possible emergency resources, number of employees, machines, the ability to move products, staff, and other equipment between departments, as well as the ability to spread the risk in every aspect, example, to other sources of income, other points, such as shops, service types. Therefore, economies of scale are quite important also from the point of view of the possibilities of the organizations and companies themselves. Of course, this does not necessarily translate into quality in the end, but it does matter to the possibilities of operation. Since the vast majority of people are employed in smaller companies, the more stabilizing action of UBI is justified.
Demand and supply impact, limitations. Restrictions on demand, consumers' needs and their ability to purchase goods, and supplying products and services to the market, result from many elements, example, social, legal, and technical constraints and stimulants. These are important issues because these elements ultimately create earning opportunities. The simplest example is the development of space. It is not always possible to build a new building, sometimes it is even inadvisable for various reasons. Demand and supply are two very important elements. Many factors, both financial and psychological, both rational and irrational, objective and often subjective, are responsible for demand and its shape, example, marketing and advertising activities. Demand constraints result from many issues, such as financial, i.e., how much money we have, what is the purchasing power. Quantitative capacity, physical consumption like the amount of things we buy and can buy, example, limited storage space, possibility of consumption. Qualitative dominant, i.e. the physical quality of products. Price dominant, i.e. buying products at given prices. Sociocultural, such as fashion, subcultures. Time to consume. Contrary to appearances, after subtracting the time for rest and work, there is not much time left for consumption. After all, the day has 24 hours, which means that we have limited time to consume goods. The required amount of sleep alone is about 8 hours a day. There are only 16 hours left to be active. We can imagine the situation of a person who has increased food needs, example, qualitative health condition, quantitative and caloric type of work performed, but does not have financial resources. In this case, the limiting feature is financial capacity. There may also be a case when a person is financially able to buy an unlimited amount of goods, but there is no such need or quantitative possibility, no storage space, or food quantity, no possibility to assimilate more. However, it may also be the case that a person can and does buy more than they need. Of course, in practice there are very different configurations. However, the key in real action are situations when people actually have financial and physical constraints of consumption. In this case, they are usually unable to become customers of companies or are low-income customers, which has fluctuations on the market, i.e. on the operation of companies and on these people as well, in the context of correlation with production costs. Supply constraints, in turn, result from similar factors and include lack of funds to buy more expensive goods, lack of technical possibilities, example, development and inability to launch a new point, to increase supply and storage space. Throughput, example, in stores, number of checkouts, self-service checkouts often take up less space. The emergence of new generation products on the market. Shelf life of products. Legal factors, example, permits. Revenues in correlation with costs and risk. Tax surcharges. There is also another issue in the supply, i.e. market share in a physical way, such as the size of the distribution area, number of stores, along with the internet coverage and psychological value, such as brand awareness, as well as economic, technological, financial, and human potential in introducing products to the market and building the further structure of the company. This may cause that having a large sales network and appropriate marketing facilities along with financial resources, the company may become a kind of market dictator, eliminating other smaller entities completely through no fault of these entities, oligopoly monopoly, and the consequence is the loss of jobs by employees of smaller companies. Therefore, the supply also has many important elements that have a different impact on the market, but also on other entities, and ultimately on citizens. Therefore, many disturbances in income from work, and thus in demand on the market, are the result of defects of one or another design of the system's operation. This problem occurs basically in all economic constructions, both practical and theoretical. An unconditional basic income, which guarantees a constant cash flow, mitigates and reduces these risks and problems. It is also worth adding that large companies, having production, distribution, and information resources, and the state with its possibilities such as permits and taxes, as well as information activities, can model the market in terms of supply, i.e. they are able, despite the existence of current demand, to provide goods other than those directly expected, and there have been many such actions in history, and such things are still happening. In addition, the owner of the distribution network does not have to accept all products for sale. It can be guided by a higher margin, arrangements, and commercial agreements. So even having a good quality product does not guarantee the possibility of selling it. Concluding, market effects, or rather defects, or simply the real operation of markets, and those due to their construction or the complexity of societies, cause difficult market and social situations that affect different people, and which people, in turn, have no influence on certain factors.
Real inflation, hidden inflation, purchasing power. Inflation, i.e. a change in prices consisting of their increase, is an economic quantity. Similarly, deflation is the lowering of prices. The number of factors that affect the value of products is quite extensive. Tax charges, fee charges, employment costs, market costs of component products and services, type of products and services, additional legal requirements such as certification costs, production scale effects, sales scale effects, investment costs and expenses, handling credit costs, example, investments, profit size, paying out a share of profits, the marketing part of the price, currency exchange differences, other legal regulations, the amount of purchasing power, products that, due to lack of sales, become a cost for the company, disposal, financial proceeds from sources other than sales, customs policy, service of credit costs, also on the consumption side, the speed of regeneration of purchasing potential. These factors are not exhaustive. Another crucial aspect is purchasing power, which refers to the amount of funds available to consumers and their physical and psychological ability to make purchases. The interplay of these factors may or may not lead to inflation. Ultimately, it depends on the overall economic structure. An interesting example is the 500-plus system, which, until 2020, did not cause a significant inflation surge. This can be attributed to the fact that competing companies use prices as one element of their incentives, but it is essential to recognize that price is just one factor among many when consumers have a certain amount of disposable income. Cheaper options are not always selected when considering the full cost of a purchase, which includes both financial and psychological aspects. In short, the arguments that introducing an unconditional basic income will lead to a significant increase in inflation are often exaggerated, and the actual impact depends on the overall economic structure. On the other hand, inflation itself, depending on its form, may not be an immediate tragedy at all. There is also hidden inflation, when the quantity of the product is reduced or its quality, lowering the cost of production, is reduced while the price remains the same. An example of this can be a cube of butter, the weight of which in Poland has been reduced to 200 g from the standard previous 250 g, which, at the same price, in fact causes a strong price increase, contrary to appearances by 20%. Such a procedure is used to distract customers and, depending on the construction of the basket, example, inflationary, it may also interfere with the calculations. From the point of view of, for example, ecologists, previously there was one package for every 250 g of the product, and now for every 200 g. Thus, the consumption of packaging was also increased by 20%. Nevertheless, inflation and deflation alone do not fully reflect the real purchasing power. The true measure lies in the ratio of disposable income, i.e., how much money we can spend, to the prices in stores. Properly relating one element to another is crucial. Short-term inflation may not significantly impact purchasing power if it aligns with income changes or applies to goods that are purchased relatively rarely, i.e., with a long useful life.
Competition and quality. The existence of competition depends on the existence of space for competition, which means, first of all, there must be some margin of profit that can be given up, price competition. After reaching the minimum profitability, it is no longer possible to compete either in price or in quality, because these values are the limit. A certain exception is the high price pressure in the context of taking over the market from the competition. On the other hand, in order to create positive, qualitative competition, there must be buyers with appropriate financial resources, i.e., the correlation of the production cost, the scale effect, and purchasing possibilities. At the same time, there must be companies that want to compete with each other, example, in terms of price and quality. The fact is that the level of oligopoly, limited competition, and the concentration of financial resources, as well as the structure of tax systems, already significantly hinders the opening of a company and changes the approach to the shape of competition. On the other hand, the costs of starting a company with today's high technology, example, in the automotive industry, but also in other fields, are so high that it is very difficult to start them from a financial point of view. Basically, for small businesses, there are still some opportunities in service and commercial spaces, conceptual work, and other areas of service, culture, and entertainment, where astronomical investments are not required, or where there is an appropriate investor. At the same time, a lot depends on the availability of technology at affordable prices and the tax cost of operation. The concentration of many elements of the market together with the real operation of tax, social and legal systems, unfortunately, significantly limits earning opportunities, and thus living and investment opportunities. Another thing is that competition, as such, does not immediately result in higher quality. It results from the whole operation of society and the market. It often happens that a service with a higher total quality is displaced by a service with lower total quality, and not always because of the price. Because companies, in general and in theoretical assumptions, strive to increase income and profits while limiting financial resources for production and operating costs, the profit maximization model. Companies make political and discretionary decisions, example, the implementation of ideas or ideologies that guide their bosses. Buyers do not always have the means to buy higher quality products. Buyers do not always feel the need for higher quality. Buyers are not always aware of the existence of other products. Fashion. Possibilities of the impact of companies and countries at the level of supply modeling. Goods with too long a lifespan or useful life do not generate income for companies. Analyzing the quality-price need by customers. Socio-psychological construction. How to manage the company effectively. Revenue modeling of profits. Limited supply space. The impact of politics on the operation of the company.